Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Hi everyone. It's been a little while since we did our
It
last
has indeed.
podcast, um, and it just seems like a good idea to perhaps refresh where we were at. Really,
Bit of a summary.
yeah.
Yep.
That the few episodes we've been doing have been around connect, listen, be with, which is the name of um, what we're offering out into the world. And so, even though we see them as all being part of a whole and they all go together,
Yep.
we thought it was useful just to spend a bit of time talking about each aspect. Not really parts, but aspects, I guess. So, if you'd like to go and take a look, we have done a session on Connect.
We started with a broad overview, I think, didn't we? The first
We
time.
did, yes. We gave a broad overview of who we are and what we're doing, and then we moved into this.
Yes.
So talked about connect or connecting. Then we did an episode that was looking at the listening part. And today's episode is about be with.
Yep.
So given it's been a little bit of time, if you're watching this for the first time, you might like to go back and take a look at the other episodes that are on our LinkedIn page, on YouTube, and take those in. And then it'll help bring everything together if this is the first time you're watching.
And look, to be fair, we talk about the three concepts as being very intertwined. So we have talked about all three concepts probably all the way through. So even if you felt like it was a bit much to go and sit through the others, you'll probably still get a sense just from this one here. But we did feel it was important to try and focus on each of the aspects. Kelsey encouraged people, go out there, put things on our LinkedIn page. If you've got questions or things you don't agree with or things you want to hear more about, please just do it. Also, you don't have to be sitting in front of your computer and watching it. You can just play it through Spotify and have it going as a bit like a podcast, although it hasn't been designed as a podcast. It is sitting on Spotify. So you can just press play and listen in the car because...
Yeah.
I think sitting, for half an hour in front of a screen, I understand people are a bit time poor, but yeah, that's the option.
Good, yeah.
So I like the way you were defining be with. So I think we'll start with that there about how you talked about it as being almost the integral part or the key or whatever.
I was thinking that really being with is such an important part of what we're wanting to get across as something that perhaps in the current world and thinking around connections with people or mental health or people just being able to communicate with each other, being with feels important. And for me anyway, and we'll talk about this a bit more, it's the idea of being with another person as an equal, really. And what we mean by that is that I'm being with you as another human being who is just like me.
Yep.
That I'm not more than, you're not more than, I am not needing to fix or change you. I'm showing up and I'm bringing a willingness to be with you, however you might be. And I think when we were preparing to do this session, we were saying it's perhaps important to think about what happens when someone does that for you. What it's like when someone is willing to be with you and how you are and accept how you are without trying to change it or make it better or judge or any of those things, but of just truly being with you in however you are at the time. And as I say that, you might want to add to this, it reminds me that what we're talking about with Connect, Listen, Be With is it's not just about someone who might be distressed or feeling they're having thoughts of ending their life. It's actually right across from someone who might even be having a good experience that they want to share with you. Or there might be something very everyday that on that particular day they're just feeling a little bit flat, or they're feeling the opposite. They might be feeling a bit excited about something. That this approach is really around how do we be with people however they are and give them space, give them a little bit of time and allow that connection, the listening and the being with, to just happen, even if it's only a short period of time, and what that does for people.
And, you know, it is true what you just said, that we have consistently said this way of connect, listen, being with somebody isn't just for people who are in distress. However, it's also worth considering that having an attitude or having that idea of connecting with people means that if you or someone else gets to a point where they are experiencing some level of distress, it is arguably going to be easier for them to perhaps share what's going on for them, because you have, by your nature and way of being, you are already giving out this message that you are coming with no judgment, that you are a human being with flaws, with problems of your own. And so you're open to whatever it is that people want to talk to you about. And by the same token, you know, whatever you wish to talk about, you do the same. So that ties also into what you just said about the notion of the expert. And I run a lot of assist training and safe talk and mental health first aid. And the thing that people often get stuck with is this idea of, as soon as people are distressed, I need to be thinking about what I'm going to be doing next, where I'm going to be referring them, how I'm going to be managing them. What we're talking about is quite different from that. You know, I think we talked about, and there are others that have similar approaches. It's not that we're the only ones, but we're really clear that we, as the listener being with person, we are not going in there with an idea of we need to fix it. We are not the expert. We are not better than anybody else. We don't hold all the answers. We are simply there to say, you know, I'm with you human to human at this point, willing to share, willing to hear, willing to be with whatever it is that you're going through. That's quite a different concept, because I think we are a bit in a society where we think, oh gee, I've got to work out what my next step is. And actually it's not just about suicide. If you think about it, people often say, you know, sometimes I just need to offload with somebody, you know, my partner or my friend. And the thing you hear a lot of, and I'm not saying it's only men and women or anything like that, but you do hear people often say, oh, my husband or my male partner, you know, he just wants to fix it. He just wants to get in there. And actually all I want to do is unpack. And of course that can work across all genders. And as I say, that's not even about suicide, that we are a society where we're feeling like we need to go in there and fix problems. A lot of the time people don't want it. And in fact, people are experts in their own solutions. Maybe the solution isn't there immediately, but sometimes just by talking it through and knowing there is someone else who's just willing to be human with you enables them to find those solutions themselves. Maybe not straight away, but at some stage.
And you're having me think a bit about like work that I've done for a long time, working with grief and loss, that this idea of being with comes to mind. That I've had a lot of people who are experiencing grief, and they will talk about friends who maybe show up when they're grieving and may not come and actually talk a lot, but they might just turn up and sit with them, and maybe not many words are shared. Like they just arrive and say, oh, you know, I thought I'd come around and just spend some time with you. And they end up just being with the person, and very few words might be shared. And the grieving person often sharing how that changes something and what that feels like to have someone who, I guess it's about a sort of acceptance, of like, no matter what you're feeling, I accept you and what you're feeling.
And there's a lot of power in that, isn't it? Because often the person can come feeling like they might be judged, or you may not accept what I have to say, because we are a judgmental society. So if we can come there with this approach of acceptance for whatever, and perhaps some of that acceptance is made easier if we think I'm not there to fix anything either. I think when you talk about grief, it is a good example, because people will say, I haven't made contact with the person who's experienced loss because I don't know what to do or say. And actually you're answering that question, don't do or say anything. You're just there being with somebody else. I can't say that strongly enough, that's what we're talking about. There are some questions, we did say that we will do in the next follow-up podcast, and I'm jumping ahead around, how long and how do you know when to stop, and how long do you need to connect with somebody. We said we would address some of those, and we'll probably steer a bit clear of that today.
I think the only thing I'd mention, which is I think consistent with what we've talked about in other episodes, is that we emphasise that we don't feel it has to be a long amount of time.
No.
When we originally started thinking about this idea, what we talked about was the idea of people meeting each other in a small country town and passing each other and just stopping maybe for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And if we think about being with, I think it is possible to go, okay, I've got 10 minutes where I'm really going to be with you, and what you share with me, even if we're passing on the street, I actually just pause and slow down long enough that I move into a space of being with the other person. And being with implies, and this is probably where we'll talk more about this, being with implies that you bring yourself into relationship with the other person in that moment.
Yep.
You're not separating yourself out. You're actually just coming in, and a bit like we said at the beginning, I'm another human being just like you, and I'm willing and able to just be with you for this period of time, whether it's a short period of time or a slightly longer.
Yeah, we did talk about that, so what makes a connection, and does a connection take a lot of time? I'm sure we've all had that, where that moment of a shared experience, which can often be where no words are exchanged, but just a glance with somebody else when something occurs perhaps, or something funny goes on around, and you just happen to be there with another person that you never met before. But in that moment there is a shared connection, and so the question is, what is it that's connected? And perhaps that's a whole different conversation. But that is how brief a connection is to be. It's about the idea of two people sharing an experience. Maybe it doesn't totally speak to what you're saying, but and we had talked about what is it that you need to bring with you when you're doing this connecting, listening, being with somebody. And I feel like what you're bringing with you, what you do need to bring with you, is a desire, genuine desire to want to connect in some way with the people around you. And we talked about country towns as being, we did talk about in one of the podcasts, that it was a learning for me to be aware of who were all the people around me, because it made a difference. People got upset when I didn't notice them. I completely understanding. Whereas in a big regional town, you easily could do an hour's worth of shopping and not come across anybody you know. So it's again about going out with an awareness of who are the people around me, so that those moments become evident. You can choose to go for a walk with your dog and completely ignore everyone and everything around you. Or you can go for a walk with your dog where you're nodding and you're noticing what's going on around you. And that nod to somebody is a connection. And I've run workshops where people say that they had been going through a difficult time. One participant had said, I was going through a difficult time. And I had a neighbor, and we used to walk our dogs, and all the neighbor ever did was say hello.
Mm.
One day I felt I was in a bad place, but I felt we had enough of a connection that I could just have more of a conversation with this person. So that opportunity had been created through those brief moments of connection. And he said that was hugely powerful when he felt like he was completely on his own. But actually, there was one person who consistently every morning said hello to him. And then it became more than that when it needed to be.
And I think, by way of thinking about, finishing off this short little episode, there is something as we're talking about being with someone. Part of the difference is when we are not feeling like we're alone with an experience, whatever that experience is, that human beings, there's plenty of material out there that seems to tell us that we're social beings. So, we're wired to connect with each other. And so if we're experiencing something and we've not had an opportunity to share it, or even have someone alongside us while we share a little bit about that experience, there's something about the not being left alone with what you're experiencing that to me does speak into perhaps what we think is a different approach to people who are in distress. That it can be, depending on what it is, there can be things that are quite distressing if you feel like you're completely alone with that experience.
Yes.
But just someone coming in and saying, I'm going to be with you in that experience, it changes something, I think.
I think it was in the first podcast that I spoke about my father. So for those who have listened to it, apologies, it's the same story again. But if you haven't, that talked a lot about older people. But of course, this is true for any age person, that you can feel incredibly alone. But we do know that sometimes as people become older and experience a range of losses around them, they can feel even more literally alone. There are fewer people around them. So my father, who did take his life 4 years ago, when we moved house, looking back, we can now see that the comments he made about, I'm having to leave all the things that I know behind. And I was quite dismissive because he talked about in terms of friendships and things. And I was like, well, your hairdresser's not really your friend. However, after we moved, he did take his life, and there was so much learning for me. Don't say that that's been a good thing, but understanding much more that for my father to create those connection points again, or felt too hard for him. And they were the things that I think gave him some sense of being connected with the world. As I said, the barista who knew what coffee he liked, the hairdresser who would help him skip the line in order to get the person that he liked to cut his hair. So he was known, and people go, hi, John, how are you going? How's your day going? And here's your coffee, haven't seen you for a while. That was very powerful. So all of us can play that role in being connectors with people around us with doing very little.
Absolutely.
How are you going? How's your day going? Great day for it. Blustery weather outside. Good to see you again. Doesn't have to actually be more than that. But I know for my father that he had an opening to be able to talk more to these people if he wanted to. So it sort of opened those doors a bit.
I don't know if this makes sense. This is just coming to me in the moment from what you said. I'm thinking of your father and the hairdresser and my own experiences with hairdressers or getting my hair cut, and some of what we've talked about as well, all this coming together, that I feel like I want to say there's something about connect, listen and be with that has a bit of a natural flow to it, that I think of, say, someone sitting down in a chair at a hairdresser. The person, the hairdresser, does make a little bit of effort. To connect.
Yep.
So they say some things, or it's like they work a little bit at the connecting. And then as they're connecting, they start listening.
Mm.
And then I think over time, what we're talking about being with, to me, is sort of when you start to relax and just, you no longer have to work at the connect
Yes.
or the listening. You're just, and you see that with some hairdressers. They do the connecting, they listen, and then after a few minutes, they've just sort of
Yes.
dropped in, and the person in the chair has also dropped in, and you're with each other.
Great example. A great example. And I think that we are talking about something that is a very natural, normal, but I think perhaps we've moved so much away from that as a society where we work behind screens and things. And I feel like there is an element sometimes, for me anyway, of me deciding that I'm going to make the effort to actually connect with people around me, to notice who's around me, and that I do have to remind myself to do it because it's so much of a habit that I just head straight forward, don't look at anybody else, don't acknowledge anybody else. And we talk about that reciprocal. When I do that connecting, oh my goodness, my day feels better because I can see someone else's face light up and I feel a connection with somebody. So actually, I feel less lonely. So again, we talk about this idea of you're not the expert going to do things for people. There's very much a reciprocal relationship that occurs.
Definitely.
And I just wanted to throw in now, getting towards the end of it, no way, shape, or form saying there isn't space for experts or for referrals to people who've done a lot of training. And in fact, you are a counselor yourself. So it's got nothing to do with that. It's more that knee-jerk response that seems to be out there, that as soon as somebody is showing distress, I am not an expert. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, so I'm just going to refer out. Or I don't have time for this, or I don't have the training for it, or I couldn't be bothered. I suppose there's a range of responses, and so we just want to encourage people to rethink that a little bit. By all means, refer, but acknowledge.
I'm going to go a little bit further there and be a bit, maybe it's not being bold, but because we've had across the time so far, some people say, oh, what you're doing sounds like active listening. And we've always had a sense of like, we can take that on board, but it feels like what we're talking about is something different or a bit more than that.
Yep. We haven't really talked about that. So
whereas I'm thinking from talking about being with, I would argue that, sure, a lot of people or a lot of ways of like active listening can be good at teaching you how to connect and how to listen. But I think the bit I'm going out on a limb with here is I actually think very often being with is the missing part. It's the, like I described earlier, it's the dropping in and actually dropping the, I need to work at connecting, I need to work at listening, which is more the active listening. It's dropping into the, I'm just going to be with you and however you are without needing or trying to do anything or be anything. And I think that's what I would hear from people who have experiences sometimes within the health system, that they might acknowledge that they feel like the person connected and listened, but they didn't feel like the person was really with them.
And I think we have talked about it previously, that we believe there are elements of the active listening. But for me, the active listening is about one person who is the listener and the one person who's the speaker. And often comes with an element of the listener is there for a particular reason. They're going to do something, and we're very much saying this is not about doing anything. And the third thing is that often as the listener, your role is not to give away any of yourself. The focus is just on the other person. And we're saying actually in what we're talking about, the focus is on both of you. So you share something of your humanness. You don't have to share anything particularly deep, but sharing how you're feeling about what you're hearing, or, but just, it's not about you just listening. And the last thing that I've said before you do so well is with that sort of listening, listening, you summarize what somebody has said and you just feed it back to them to check it. Absolutely correct. But you have taught me this idea that you also summarize what is not being said. You're summarizing the body language, which, as we know, is 70% of communication anyway. So you're passing all of that back and saying, I'm noticing when you said that, you took a big, deep breath, and I'm just curious about what that's about. Because part of doing that is also letting somebody know that you are well and truly there with them, because you're noticing a whole lot of things about them. So it becomes a deeper being with as well, and it's not just what the words are that are being exchanged, it's what's not being said, it's the emotions. Yeah. So it's far more powerful. So
I think
it for today.
that feels like a okay place to end this episode. There will be more to come. Please do share these videos if you find them useful and interesting. Go back and listen to the others, as you said, maybe on Spotify. But yeah, part of it is wanting to do what we talk about. Like, if you have things that you want to share or contribute in, then you can comment on the YouTube channel. There's spots to comment there.
Yep, you can
If
do
you
that.
see us
Or
post
on
LinkedIn, we really, really welcome all of that.
And I just wanted to also say, just acknowledging again all the work of, you talked about Martin Buber, but also people like Matt Ball from the Humane Clinic, and very conscious that our thoughts and ideas are not in complete isolation. They do come from people we've met who've had a big influence on us, I think, and things we've read. And so we'd be interested in hearing from you about any other people. That'd be good to learn more from.
Absolutely.
Thank you for today. We'll
Thank you
say
for
goodbye for now.
listening and watching.
Goodbye.
Bye.